Hello again, and welcome to another dangerous episode of Forbidden Knowledge. My name is Craig, and we do this once a week when I can. I try. I don't always get on every week, and unfortunately, I don't have all the free time available, as apparently a lot of other people do that broadcast on this network and others. I just literally am too busy to even do a show every week nowadays. But anyway, we are live if you're watching or listening on May the 6th of 2015. It's 5/6/15. By watching, I mean we are also on Ustream today, ustream.com or ustream.tv. You have to enter in Forbidden Knowledge to find the right page, but we are broadcasting live on Ustream and Liberty Tree Radio via Live 365, and maybe we'll even do something on with this episode on YouTube. We'll see when we get there if we can even actually load it, because sometimes the episode doesn't even save properly. But we are recording and we are broadcasting on Ustream as well as Liberty Tree Radio. So, May the 6th of 2015. This weekend, let's see, where will I be? I will be somewhere, but I don't know where, and probably not doing a show, actually. Being the Mother's Day weekend, almost said holiday. Mother's Day weekend, basically there are very few shows around the country to do. There was a show in Southern Ohio I could have done. Looked like a very, very small gun show. Didn't know anything about the show. Kind of a big risk to go that far just to do a small gun show, like 150 tables. I'm used to doing 1,000 table shows, essentially. And there's also a preparedness expo. If you're in northern Pennsylvania or eastern Ohio, you might want to check out in Erie, Pennsylvania. There is a preparedness expo on Saturday this weekend. I refuse to do one-day shows. It takes me about 5 or 6 hours to set up and about 3 or 4 hours to tear down. So, and to do a one-day show, it's just not practical for me. And so I refuse to do that show or any other show that's a one-day show, frankly. That should have to be some kind of really special show. They don't learn. They try to get me to do it all the time. They don't learn. They will want to change their ways to make it a 2 or 3 day show. So I won't do it. And so anyway, basically there'll probably be no show for me this weekend. So it's very rare that I do not do a show. It only happens once or twice a year where I don't do a show on some particular weekend. And this weekend looks like to be one of them. However, if you're watching this as a rerun or listening to this as a rerun rather, then you will find, if you go to forbiddenknowledge.info, that we will be in Dayton, Ohio in a week and a half. That would be middle May. I don't know what days actually. Probably 14th, 15th, and 16th, probably. That would be the Dayton Ham Fest. Yep, once a year, and again coming up, the Dayton Ham Fest, an annual trek to Dayton, Ohio. Very unusual type of thing for me because, of course, I don't really do anything with ham radio, but I do well there. They love me there. I bring some special shortwave radios with me that they really love. I'm sorry, ham radios, not shortwave radios. Because ham radios broadcast, shortwave just listen, but these are broadcasting devices. And they have the big civil defense logos in yellow, just like the equipment I sell, and it's from the same era of the 50s and 60s of the equipment I sell, dealing with radiation detection. So they love me there. I put them on the table, and I remember the first year I ever brought it to the Dayton Ham Fest, I put it on the table, put one of them on the table. I have 2 models now. I'm looking for a third, even rarer ones that I have, but I put it on the table, and within a minute, already there's people starting to gather around it, and I'm just setting up, but people gather around it, they look at it, they talk about it, they have discussions on it, they're taking pictures of it, they hang around. I call them my ham magnets because it brings them to the table. And they always ask me, well, does it work? I said, well, of course it works. You're standing here, aren't you? Yeah, so but frankly, I don't know if I've never tried to fire one up. I was told not to try to do so. We'll probably destroy them. But anyway, I have 2 of them now, 2 different models. And it brings them to the table, and it's something very interesting for them to look at and talk about. So they love me there, not only because of those radios, but also because the electronics of the same type of tube-type technology, another type of 60s and 50s technology that they're used to dealing with the ham radios. And by the way, if you're a fan of maker fairs, I'll probably have to describe what that is for most of you because most of you don't understand what a maker fair is. A maker fair is a type of show that is basically for inventors. Very unusual stuff goes on. Robotics, things like that. There's a lot of different things that happen at maker fairs. Well, the Dayton Ham Fest, I've been told by the promoter. Last year I was there, we had a discussion with the promoter, and because the ham radio profession, or hobby I should say, is basically dying out. All these old timers that were into ham radio and old tube technology, they are dying out as well, and it's kind of taking the hobby with it for the most part. There's still a lot of people that do it, but it is dying slowly because of the internet and phones. Nowadays you can just pick up a cell phone and dial all over the country just with a cell phone, right? Or get on the internet and talk with somebody live on the internet. So ham radio doesn't have as much of a use today, but it's still a big hobby. Unfortunately, it's dying, and the shows are also dying a little bit slowly with it. But the Dayton Ham Fest show, that I've been told by the promoter, that they are trying to slowly morph it into a combination ham radio and maker fair. So you will start finding things slowly at this at this show. I don't know about other ham radio shows, because I've never done any other ham radio show. This is the only one. This is the biggest of the country. This is the one I've done for about 5 or 6 years now. But they're trying to slowly morph it into a maker fair, not change it completely, just introduce maker fair types of tables and booths in order to keep the size and their status as a good big show, I guess. I don't know exactly the reasons for that, but you could imagine that having the biggest show in the country dealing with ham radio, then all of a sudden it slowly starts dying, then the promoters will start having a hard time with that, the clubs and so on. So anyway, it's going to be probably May 14th, 15th, 16th, or 15th, 16th, 17th, something like that. 3-day show, be on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Dealing with ham radio, of course. So, you're welcome to phone in. I have a couple of topics I could cover here. Be welcome to call in. Hopefully those of you who are regulars know the number to call in, because I don't have it in front of me, and I've always had a hard time dealing with that. And I've never been able to listen to my own program or other programs like the rest of you do on either the internet or the phone. I just can't do it. I can't get to an internet connection as easily as all the rest of you people. And I'm always quite busy. Don't have time to sit there and listen to the radio. Let's try not to make this a waste of your time. I have some information here about taxes today. Taxes, huge subject. Could do a whole show about taxes and nothing but taxes, and you could fill the whole show easily. Kind of a history of taxation. We're going to talk about sales tax primarily, but we want to talk about all taxes. And frankly, a lot of you people, because where I'm sitting right now in the state of Michigan, there was, as of a couple days ago, there was a referendum on the ballot to increase the sales tax from 6% to 7%. And it failed miserably. In fact, it failed, I think I heard the report said it failed about the most miserably of any referendums ever failed in the state of Michigan. So the voters, I think at a 4-to-1 ratio, rejected Proposal 1, which would have raised the sales tax from 6% to 7 cents, I almost said 70 cents again, in the state of Michigan. Now, what about sales tax? Well, the cry on this particular one, because there's always going to be a gimmick to try to get you to believe that, oh, we need this tax. And the gimmick this time was to fix the roads. Oh, the roads are in such bad shape, don't you know we got to raise your sales tax so we can fix the roads. And then there was also going to be, with this, there was a bunch of other things added where it would have increased, I guess, the fuel tax that you pay at the pump and some other things, and it was all fairly complicated. And they say, the analysts, or maybe we should call them analists, deciding that was one of the reasons it didn't pass, because of all the complications in the referendum. Or maybe it was just because you're trying to raise our taxes again. Did you ever think of that? So the referendum failed, and it failed miserably, which was a good sign, of course, because all over the nation this has been happening. So this is nothing new to any of you, probably, unless you live in one of the 5 states that does not have a sales tax, but then you're taxed in other ways, of course, as well. So let's do a little brief history about the sales tax, where they come from, why they started, why we need them, what is this all about? Well, who's responsible? Well, the people who run your lives, the masters who control you, of the slave you are, of course, do that. But some say Kentucky came up with a precursor of the modern state sales tax back in 1930. That's right, the first sales tax was only in 1930, less than 100 years ago, folks. Maybe it's kind of like that income tax that became known to be the income tax, the federal income tax that was a voluntary tax in response to World War II, 70 years ago, or 70 some years ago now when it started. A temporary measure, of course, don't you know? Well, actually, Kentucky had a revised their very first sales tax to a 3% flat tax, sales tax. But then in 1936, they scrapped their sales tax. That's right, they got rid of it. So theirs was a temporary one at the time because, well, they scrapped it until then they reintroduced it again in 1960. But, and then of course, the state of Mississippi also started a sales tax around the same time, 1930. So basically, the Great Depression inspired desperate state governments to try to implement sales taxes. So that's very clear that the Depression basically started. Of course, the Depression was a promulgated event designed to bring down our country a little bit at a time and bring us into the wars and all the other things that they did eventually. But 24 other states that use the sales tax today started also in the 1930s. 6 more joined the trend in the next decade. 5 states got on the bandwagon in the 1950s, and in the 1960s, 11 more states imposed the tax, and the last state to do so was Vermont in 1969. Now, back in the 30s, the U.S. economy largely had to do with selling goods. The legislators didn't like the idea of taxing people's labor, but they have no problem with it now, do they? That's how sales tax came to focus on goods rather than services. Sales taxes are vitally important to state budgets, but in 1970, sales tax became the largest single source of revenue for state governments. Since the late 1990s, personal income tax revenues have brought states more money than sales taxes, but these taxes still amount to a big chunk of money that comes into states' budgets. In fact, some states raise nearly 60% of their tax revenue from sales taxes alone. Many states that count on a sales tax for a lot of income may face trouble down the road. Whenever the economy turns down, legislators are tempted to raise the sales tax. Often temporarily, increases are rolled back when times get better, but then something starts to happen. The sales tax goes up again. But the trend is clear, and it's very clear that it is upward all the time. You never see it really go down. If it goes down, it's only temporary. Now, a lot has changed since the 1930s, however. A far greater share of the economy now is based on services rather than goods, but historically haven't been taxed. His services haven't been taxed. In recent years, though, states have been moving towards taxing services, but changes in the tax law are controversial and tough to accomplish. In March 2010, for example, Michigan Governor, we were talking about Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm sparked an outcry when she proposed cutting the state sales tax from 6% to 5.5% and I guess you could say impounding, to imposing the reduced tax on a number of specific services, including legal services and landscaping. So, as far as Michigan is concerned, a brief history of their tax. Basically, in 1933, the Michigan sales tax was 3%. Now, and it was limited by the Michigan Constitution. A 1960 constitutional amendment increased the maximum sales tax rate to 4% in 1961. A constitutional amendment was passed in 1994 that raised the maximum sales tax to 6%. And now they've just tried to raise it to 7%, but they failed in their attempt to do so this time around. This time the cry being to fix the roads. Well, did we have roads in 1933 before the Michigan sales tax was implemented? I think so. Did your state? Your state didn't have sales tax until probably the 1930s or later. Did you have roads in your state? Did we all of a sudden need those to build roads? No, I guess not. Did we need them to fix roads? Well, that may have been the cry at the time, or maybe more than likely it was something to do with schools or something of that nature. That's usually the cry that they usually get away with, is we're going to raise the sales tax because our schools are in such bad shape. Well, excuse me, but our governments have no business being involved in the schools. No constitutional authority really to impose the schools upon us, our indoctrination centers. But no, the cry is usually the one the cry they usually get away with is, oh, our schools are in such bad shape, we need to have a sales tax increase to help our schools. If the caller is online and want to join in, you're welcome to. So now your state probably did about the same thing. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to see what of their famous tricks is they're doing it right now with the roads are in real bad shape, so they're going to raise the fuel tax. One of the states has already raised, I think it's Kentucky or Tennessee, I'm not sure which. I could be wrong on both. They just raised their fuel tax by 29 cents a gallon. 29 cents a gallon. And they're saying they had to do it because they got to put their roads back in shape for that particular state, which is, of course, a bunch of BS because as soon as they get $1 billion, they're just going to raise the fund and reappropriate the money.
Yep, and that's happening. It really happens all over the country, little by little, doing incrementally. Are you in Tennessee?
What's that?
Caller, are you in Tennessee?
No. Right now I'm in Missouri. I'm a driver. I'm in Missouri right now.
Oh, Missouri,
Well,
actually.
I'm really familiar with the fuel tax game.
Oh, so you're a licensed driver?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and as you know, now with diesel fuel, it's different. And maybe you can answer me this, because I'd like to ask a question if you're very familiar with taxation of the pump. It's always a question that's bothered me. Years ago, let's say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that, diesel fuel always used to be lower priced than gasoline. And nowadays, it's generally always higher than gasoline. What gives there? Can you answer that question? Do you know?
Yeah, because it's more of a thing is. It's supply and demand. Because commercially there's just so much more diesel being sold. I mean, it's a low grade fuel. It's one of the cheapest fuels there is to make, but it's the most expensive to buy. There's 30 million commercial vehicles on the road right now buying fuel. That's why. But one more real quick fact. There's also a thing called road tax, and a lot of commercial vehicles go into some of these smaller states. For example, Connecticut. You'll have 25 or 30,000 commercial vehicles a day going into Connecticut, but they won't buy the fuel because the fuel's real expensive, so they'll buy the fuel in another state. So what they do is they charge a road tax. And commercial vehicles are now, they've always have been, charged a certain amount of money per mile just to drive through the state, not even buy fuel. They call it a road tax. And that's another little secret not many people know about. And it's going to be coming into the private sector here shortly. They're going to start charging cars just to run through the state.
And is that done through toll booths or the automatic toll systems?
Well, with commercial vehicles, it's done through accounting at the end of the year. You have to keep track of what states you ran through, and then you give all the information to your accountant, and your accountant knows how to charge because he's trained to charge for trucking accounting. But yeah, to answer your question, with the private vehicles, they're trying to open up more and more tolls all over. That's one way they're going to get it. And the other way is they might even start, flagging the car as it goes through the state by either another kind of electronic device on your windshield, and they'll know, it'll automatically tell, that you're there. And then when you leave, it'll flash it again, and they'll know how much to charge you. I mean, it's going to get real bad out there. They're really getting creative.
Yeah, and that the road tax is really kind of a hidden tax that none of us four-wheelers know about hardly, because if we aren't subject to it, then we don't even know about it. And it sounds like it's based on, basically it's a, I wouldn't say voluntary, it's a compliant, although you have to comply, it's something that you do through your logs, so it's based on the honor system in a way, then, correct? Your logbooks?
Well, yeah, it's right, because you have to buy permits in order to drive through the state. See, that's another thing, you got to buy a permit to drive through the state. That's on top of the road tax and top of the fuel tax. You also have to buy a once-a-year permit to drive through the state to do commerce. So it gets you about 4 or 5 different ways if you're a licensed commercial driver trying to make a buck out here. They get you so heavy, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's
one more real quick fact. It costs $150 for a semi to cross the George Washington Bridge in New York. Can you believe that? So a round trip into New York City for a commercial for a semi just across the George Washington Bridge is $325.
$325 to get into New York City then.
Yeah, for a commercial for an 18-wheeler semi.
Wow.
And it costs the car about I think it's like $40 each way, something like that.
Wow, that's a good way to keep you out of the city.
Yeah, so I mean, these bullshit Jews, they have this covenant going. I mean, it's just, I mean, they raise the price every year on everything.
Yeah, well, that's very good information, and I thank you for calling. Yeah, and raising the price every year. See, that's the thing too. A lot of people during this Michigan sales tax increase, a lot of the people just get kind of complacent about it. They say, "Oh, it's only a penny. What do I got to worry about it? It's just a penny. Don't worry about it. You know, it's just a penny." Well, that's what they just keep saying. It's just a penny. It's just a penny. Well, no, it's 1%, and not only that, this is the bottom line to remember about all these sales tax increases. We never had sales taxes before. At some point in time, we never had them at all, and we still had roads, and they still got repaired. Now these increases, yeah, a little bit at a time, incrementally, until you look back, and all of a sudden you're paying. Right now, all of you are paying about 50% of what you make in taxes. Actually, it's a lot more than that, and I'll explain that in a bit. But to go back to the callers, I have some information here too, based on my travels, and the callers certainly would have seen this. And with diesel, it's a little bit different, but with gasoline, I can certainly tell you this. If you're traveling across the country, if we go from, let's say, if we are in New Jersey, you want to fill up before you go into Pennsylvania, because what you find is when you cross the borders of certain states, you're going to find these huge increases. And now it sounds like Tennessee is going to be one of those states where you want to fill up before you go through Tennessee. But New Jersey into Pennsylvania is a red flag area. If you're in Missouri, where the driver said he was, in Missouri, you want to fill up in your Missouri if you're going towards Illinois. Before you get out of St. Louis, you want to fill up in Missouri because it's going to be about 30% slower than it will be in Illinois. Also in South Carolina, you want to fill up in South Carolina before you're going into North Carolina because it's a big difference there as well. You'll find similar things going on in between Florida and Alabama. So anyway, if you pay attention to where you are, you can save a lot of money on fuel by paying the lower taxes before you head into a state that has higher taxes.
You mentioned Missouri. Illinois and Missouri are the two cheapest states to buy fuel right now.
Well, but there's a big difference between Missouri and Illinois, though. If you go across the
not for diesel.
Oh, not for diesel.
Not for diesel.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, I'm talking for gasoline. There's a big difference there. I also notice when I go through Indiana when I do have to buy diesel, because sometimes I do have to buy diesel depending on what vehicle I'm in. Well, I should say what car I'm in, what van I'm in. Indiana, the listing on the pumps, I mean, the listing on the sign is deceptive because you go to the pump and it's like 20-some cents higher when you actually go up to the pump and find out what the real price is. Because somebody like me, I'm not fuel exempt like commercial drivers are. The sign will show something different than what's actually on the pump, and that's because they have to add additional taxes if you don't have the exempt sticker for your truck diesel taxes in that particular state. So some states are deceptive on the prices you show on the diesel side of the pump versus the gasoline side. So, but anyway, you can save a lot of money when you're traveling by doing so. So here's one thing about the sales taxes that is really rarely ever talked about. Not only did we never have one, they keep increasing them little by little. They want to keep doing it slowly, otherwise, just like the frog in the hot water, they will tend to want to jump out of the water before, if it's done quickly. If the water is hot, they will jump out quickly. So they just increase the heat a little at a time and gets us to be dying slowly at a slow death in taxes. And it's not just the sales tax, but here's the thing. Here's the thing that everybody seems to miss when we're talking about the sales tax in all these states and how it's only going up a penny. What are you worried about? It's only going up a penny. Well, no, it's going up a percentage. And not only that, based on the fact we never had a sales tax at one time in any of the states to begin with, and they're raising the taxes little by little, now we have a situation where we have percentages. Because a lot of people say, well, it's only going up a penny. There's inflation, don't you know? Inflation's taking it up. Well, no. inflation also says you're paying more too. So when your income goes up or when you're buying more things, you're paying more for the items you're paying a percentage. And so the state gets more money in their coffers just by default because of percentage. So yeah, they're only raising it 1%, but it continues to go up. The revenues continue to go up. In other words, if it was okay in 1933 to have a 3% tax in Michigan, we're talking here, and most other states very similar, then why do we need a 6% now or a 7% now? Well, that tells me the governments are very inept at what they're doing, that the money is going somewhere because they're still getting a percent. In other words, they're getting more money because it's a percentage. It doesn't, some people just seem to lose the fact that it's not just inflation here we're talking about a percentage. So you're paying more and more and more and more all the time, and that's where the people of Michigan apparently decided enough is enough. You raised it from 4% in 1994 to 6%. Where, 1994 they raised from 4% to 6%, and now they're trying to raise it again. And most states in the country, when I look at the charts that I have, show similar ranges of taxation. And I have a list here showing all the taxes of all the states. And basically, it's all the same kind of thing. And most all of them started around the same time. Once Kentucky got the nerve and got away with it, then all states said, hey, we can do that. And everybody started doing it. Now, the main criticism of sales tax has to do with fairness and social justice. Sales tax are regressive, meaning that they hit the poor harder than the rich. Poor people have to spend a larger percentage of their income just to get by. Richer people can save more of their income tax and use it other ways that don't involve paying a sales tax. But that's not the only bad rap on sales tax. There are too many exemptions. With the exception of Hawaii, most states with sales tax have exempt a number of items. Some of these exemptions lessen the tax burden on the poor. For instance, food is often exempt, as are prescription medications. Other exemptions are more politically motivated and draw criticism. Yeah, some states, well, many states, no food. In fact, I know when I go through Ohio, a very strange thing happens. If I go through Ohio, if I go in and buy, let's say they have 2 Big Macs for $5 or whatever. That's a special I think they're running now. Well, if I go through the drive-through, that's what it is, $5. If I go and walk inside and sit down and eat it, and I get charged a sales tax, then I get charged $3.40 or whatever it is in Ohio. So it's really strange. So in other words, if it's carry out, it's not taxed, whereas it's sales tax, whereas other ways it's the dine-in is actually taxed. Now, some states are too complicated, have too complicated exemptions. One reason for the sales tax are complicated and sometimes confusing for retail. Others, in fact, various states have different rates, rules, and ways of collecting from retailers. This maze of tax laws can be a nightmare for retailers doing business in more than one state. For instance, before mentioned Ohio, I can go from one county and pay something for in a store, and then I can go to the next county and pay something completely different because the county sales taxes and local sales taxes affect what's going on at the cash register. Now there's double taxation. Businesses usually are treated as consumers and charge sales tax on office supplies and other items that they use that don't go directly into the products or services they sell. This expense raises the price they charge on their goods and services on which consumers pay sales tax. Many can't keep up with the times. The economy has changed faster than sales taxes have. Services are as much a bigger part of the American economy today than were in the 1930s. That's because we used to be a manufacturing base. Now we're a services-based economy. I wonder how that happened. I guess maybe that happened intentionally, don't you think? It's one way to bring down a country, isn't it? States are beginning to tax some services like telephone and cable and satellite TV, but they encounter a lot of resistance. And that's another way they're getting up. Instead of raising the sales tax, you see, if they have trouble raising from 6% to 7%, well, they may just raise something, they just may start implementing a sales tax on something like services. One way to get around you Tea Party people who seem to think we have high taxes or something. The economy has changed faster. Okay, I got that part. Look, the lack of online sales taxes via the internet has affected sales tax in at least two important ways. Online shopping makes it easier for consumers to buy goods in other states and avoid sales taxes on most purchases. And downloading music, movies, books, game software allows people to buy things they want without paying that state's sales tax. So sales taxes aren't the perfect ways for the states to raise revenue, and if states are going to continue to rely heavily on sales tax, they'll have to figure out how to deal with the changing times. But shoppers should know what their state sales taxes are not going to disappear anytime soon. Now, there are some states, if I can find the section here, I've got it down here. Kentucky started all off, but there's 5 states today that still do not have a sales tax. Did you know? Alaska is one of them, but unfortunately, Alaska, you go in any city, you're going to find a fairly high sales tax rate because it's done locally. It's just not a state sales tax. Another state is New Hampshire, no sales tax. Montana, no sales tax. Delaware, no sales tax. And Oregon still do not have statewide sales tax. So, what about, so that's a major way now states are getting their money out of us, and they just keep raising it, and they're raising it, and it's raising a percentage. So don't just say it's 1 penny, because they're raising a percentage. There should never be any reason ever to raise a percentage. Ever, 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 because it's a percentage. Yes, prices go up, but they're still getting a percentage. It's not just a penny, it's a percentage. So that's a very clear example, because we had roads in 1933, before the Michigan sales tax, then the sales tax should have been the same. If the cry is due to roads, which is what their excuse was, oh, we got to improve our roads, and now they're saying on the radio, I listen to National Propaganda Radio today, also known as NPR to you folks. I listen to National Propaganda Radio, and I find that they're saying right now they're attacking it, saying, oh, well, now there's going to be no budget for road. The road, we just lost a year of road construction budget. That's what they're telling you right now in Michigan, saying, well, we just lost a year of road construction because you didn't pass our new sales tax. And other years, it might be the cry of the schools. Oh, well, our schools are going to suffer now. And that's usually the cry that gets people to voluntarily raise their own sales tax, to put the chains upon you further. Why do I say that? I mean, well, we need taxes, right? Well, yes, we do need taxes. There's certain taxes that are necessary. And governments, if a government is to exist, does need a certain amount of money as taxes. I shouldn't say sales tax. It can be done other ways, and there are lawful methods of getting taxes from the people. Now, how are we taxed today? We're taxed at about a 50% rate, don't you know? Most of you don't know. Actually, this is very easy to demonstrate. Combine all your taxes together that you pay. You make a certain amount every year. Let's say you make $50,000 a year, okay? About $25,000 of that's going in taxes, at least visibly. And you're saying, huh? How come? I don't pay that much in taxes. Well, yes, you do, and I'm going to demonstrate right now for those of you who don't know. Basically, let's start with a sales tax. Of course, almost all of us have a sales tax, unless you're in one of those 5 states. You also probably have an income tax, not only from your state, but federal. That's already raising the stakes, isn't it? You also have fuel taxes you're paying, we talked about also a little bit here today. Fuel taxes. You may have excise tax. You may have luxury taxes. You might have estate taxes. You might have when you start adding property tax. When you start adding all these taxes together, some of the ones I mentioned and many more that you get all the time, then you can start seeing where it's fairly easy to demonstrate you pay about 50% of what you make in taxes. Easy. Well, it gets worse, folks. You actually spend about 80% in taxes, most of you. That's right, I said about 80%. Because, think about this, now with that, you start out with $50,000, or what we're calling dollars here. It's not dollars, it's debt instruments pretending to be dollars. 25,000 of those units left to use. Well, now everything you buy, you're going to buy things with this money, with the last of that 25,000 you have left. You're going to buy things. You're going to pay your rent. You're going to buy things. When you pay your rent or your mortgage, more taxes rolled in. When you buy that pair of shoes, how much of that is figured in as taxes before I'm not talking about sales tax here, folks. I'm talking about the taxes that go in to produce that product and bring it to market. In other words, that pair of shoes, let's say a pair of shoes costs $100. Well, about half of that is probably taxes rolled into it because the retailer has to pay a lot of taxes in his business in order to get it to put it on the shelves to sell to you. You think he's just going to absorb those costs? No, he's got to pass them on to you. And it's not just the retailer, of course. The driver, for instance, that brought it there, you heard all the taxes the drivers have to pay. You think that's just automatic, that they just covered that? It's going to be, that's not going to be rolled in? Of course not. It's all rolled in. And, well, the farmer who raised that cow, if it's leather, he had to pay property tax. He had to pay all sorts of taxes to get it to become an actual product. You think he's just going to absorb those costs? No. He's going to pass them on to you. So that item that you bought, that pair of shoes, maybe about half of it was in taxes. So everything you buy has more taxes rolled into it that are hidden on the surface to you, but that you do pay because it's all rolled in. They don't just absorb the cost. The farmers, the transporters, the retailers, that's all rolled in. So you pay it. Ultimately, the consumer pays those taxes as well. So you're paying about 50% that is quite visible on the surface, and you're paying a whole lot more with what's left. So it's very easy to demonstrate that your tax rate is much higher, because a lot of people will say, oh, my tax rate's only 15%, or whatever number you decide to pick. No, it's more like 80%, folks. You just don't see it as well. It's like double taxation. If you buy a car, you're paying a sales tax. Well, if that car at 5 years down the road you decide to sell it, the person who buys it next also gets charged a sales tax again. Double taxation on the same original sale. That's just trying to demonstrate to you, when you say taxes aren't too bad, you just haven't studied it, because about 80% of what you make goes into taxes. And without getting into the federal income tax, which is a whole nother whole nother topic, you can see where the American people have started to have enough. And here now in Michigan, what I've been hearing on the radio here where I'm at in Michigan, that the voters have decided, no, you aren't going to tax us on this. So they'll come up with another ploy. Oh, guaranteed they'll come up with another ploy. Even though they're intentionally driving the state into the ground, and this is happening all around the country. Why do I say that? Well, under a socialist totalitarian form of government, they have to bring the government down. Under socialism, you have to bring your country down to the level of all others. In order for a socialism, a worldwide socialism to work, you have to bring down the strength of the countries, the strong countries. So it's all done intentionally. If you study the secret societies and what they're doing to this nation and the world, they have to bring this country down. They have to do it slow enough that you don't notice, because you might stop them and stand up with your gun or do something about it, or you might not pay them anymore. You see, that's where the real power is. They don't really care much about your guns, I'm sorry to say. They want to take them from you, but they don't care that much about them because they got you by the wallet. And they got you by the IRS, and you wouldn't dare do anything against the IRS now, would you? Because you have assets to protect. You have a Social Security number. All this stuff comes into play. That's the real control. They got you by the Social Security number. You wouldn't dare stop paying your taxes. You see what I'm saying? This is where the real control comes up. It comes into play. You have what they call the 4 boxes of government. And I don't know if I can remember all of them. The ballot box. They got the vote is controlled. They don't care about your vote. They can do whatever they want. They count the vote, so that your vote doesn't matter, and you decide you never vote for president anyway. You don't elect the president. Never have, never will. Sorry. Don't believe me? Look at the Constitution, folks. The jury box, which they kind of do care about, but most people have no clue about the jury box, and you're right in jury nullification, so that can kind of be ignored because you don't have much power, because you don't know your power, because most of you don't know anything about jury nullification. There's the ballot box, which now in this case in the state of Michigan, that's helped them out in this case. Oh, I mentioned the ballot box. It helped them out this case, but generally they count the votes so they can pretty much do whatever they want. But it looks like they weren't able to hide it from the American people this time in the state of Michigan. You have the cartridge box, which of course is there to protect you from when governments get completely out of hand. Well, aren't they already completely out of hand, folks? But you won't do anything about it because you got a Social Security number. That's really the bottom line there. Then there's the soapbox. You can stand up all you want. You get these free speech zones if you want to protest. You go over here to this parking lot, 5 blocks from downtown, and here's where you can free speech. It's free speech all you want. They don't care. They control the media. My voice you're hearing right now will never get on the mainstream media, ever. Guaranteed. I've tried to get my voice even heard on public access, and I've been kicked off of 6 public access channels over the years. About 15 years time now, I've been doing this sort of thing. So you can get up on your soapbox all you want, and you can listen all you want and learn all you want, but you're not doing anything about it, are you? No, you aren't. Most of you aren't. I hope I'm making some of you mad, because if you're getting mad, and instead of getting mad at me, watching me on the screen, maybe you should look in the mirror and get mad at yourself for not doing anything about it. I started doing something about it a long time ago. Even though I stopped paying a lot of those taxes, the ones I don't have to, I'm still paying about half what I make in taxes. But you all are paying about 80%. I'm doing my best not to pay all these taxes. The ones I'm not lawfully required to pay, I do not pay. But you all else do go along to get along, because you don't want to lose that car. You don't want to lose that house. You got a Social Security and a pension and all these other things you're trying to protect. So you couldn't possibly do anything against the IRS, because they got you by the Social Security. That's what they got you by. I'm sorry, folks. And that's why they don't really care about your gun, because you're already a slave to the system because you got a Social Security number. Any other callers want to chime in here? I heard some more people come in. Anything you want to add tonight? Okay, if you're listening on May the 5th, is that May the 5th? Is that what date it is? Let me look again. No, May the 6th. May the 6th. If you're listening on May the 6th, Wednesday, May the 6th, you're listening live. Otherwise, it's calling in will be futile, and so May the 6th, we're on live. If you're listening as a rerun, then it's not longer valid, of course. So they got us believing that a 1% increase is okay, and it just continually adds to the problem. It doesn't fix anything. In fact, state coffers all over the country are being mismanaged to the point where all states are having to do this. It's not just Michigan, the one I'm talking. I'm sure every state, the state you're listening from, the same story applies, just slightly different numbers and different dates. But the trend is, of course, always upward. Always upward. Never truly goes down. Might go down temporarily, but the trend is always upward. Always will be, because they have to bring this country down. That's what's happening. They have to bring the stronger countries down, state by state if they have to. They have to bring the countries down in order for a one-world socialist totalitarian form of government to have any chance at all in hell of surviving. Can't have strong states in a socialist world. And that's what you've all been seeing. I don't care how old you are. You've seen it all your life. Whether you're young or old, your country gets going worse and worse no matter what. Slowly but surely it gets worse. It's doing it slowly. It's in slow motion. They have to, in order to keep you from putting a stop to it. But you won't put a stop to it because you have a Social Security number. Social Security, what, started around the same time sales taxes too, didn't it? Interesting. And then a couple decades later, the federal income tax. Temporary measure, of course, but never went away and never went down either. Right? Always continues to go up. Sometimes some president comes in and says he's going to lower your taxes, whether it does or not, doesn't matter. The trend is always up. And doesn't matter whether Republican or Democrat is in office, and that's why I say that I don't think Hillary stands much of a chance as going into office, is because they have to keep you believing there's a difference between the Democrats and Republicans, and in order for that to happen, they have to keep jockeying back and forth. And now that we've had a Democratic president for 8 years, and you're very upset about it. Not because he's black. Some of you may because he's black, but not because he's black. And I told all of you 7 years ago when he got into office that it won't make any difference whether he's black or not. Things will get worse for black and white alike because it doesn't matter. The object is to bring the country down. Doesn't matter whether he's black or white. But anyway, as you see, things got worse in the 7 years he's been in office. And the next clown that gets in the office and the last one that was in office made things worse as well and will continue to get worse. That's by design. But because you're so upset now with the Democrat, you're going to want to, they got you believing that, oh, we need Republicans in there now. They're going to make things all better. And the Republicans, of course, just make things worse, just like the Democrats did. And that's, again, by design. It's intended that way. And for all of those you who said, 7 years ago that, oh, Obama's going to get assassinated. There's nobody that's ever going to stand up for him and be in office, and because he's a black man, that was the initial contention. Because he's black, he's going to get assassinated. And I said back then, no, he won't be assassinated unless he doesn't do what he's told. Because the puppet masters tell him what to do, and if he doesn't do it, he'll end up like Kennedy. But it won't be because he's black. But that's what people thought. That's what people thought 7 or 8 years ago. Thought he'd be assassinated because he's black. No, he'd be assassinated if he didn't do what he was told. And he's done a wonderful job as president to bring the country down. If that's the goal, he's done a wonderful job, and so he wasn't assassinated. Get it? Same for the next guy that gets in, and all the other ones that were in. Why was Kennedy assassinated? Well, a lot of you believe it was because of either, it was because of Russians, or it was because of, what was the other excuses, Vietnam, or it was because of whatever. There was all these theories about what it was, of the mob, but really he was taking steps to abolish the Federal Reserve by issuing by taking back control of the paper money system from the private Federal Reserve to United States again through United States notes. That's really why you don't mess with the money, folks. Lincoln was doing something similar with the greenbacks. He got assassinated. Andrew Jackson was also doing it. Now, Andrew Jackson was attempted to be assassinated twice, but didn't work. He survived it, and he actually routed out the vipers, as he called it, got rid of the money system of the day, the private bankers. You see, that's what gets you killed. It's not because you're black. So, what we're going to see here. Go ahead.
I'd just like to know how in the last 7 years Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton have gone from zero to $350 million net worth.
Yeah, and I heard Bill Clinton on the radio yesterday say, not making any apologies for his like $1 million speech fees, like $500,000 to $1 million that he gets per speech, and he was saying his words were, "I got bills to pay." Bill Clinton actually had the nerve to go on TV and radio and actually say that he justifies that multi-million-dollar speech revenue he gets probably every month. He's got bills to pay. Well, I'm sure he has bills to pay, but so do us, and we don't get anything for speaking. That's just kind of an amazing thing for him to say, especially when his wife is running for president. But fear not, folks. Hillary won't get in office. That's my prediction, because, frankly, the American people they'll have to get you to believe that the Democrats have failed and that we need a Republican in there now. And unless they come out with a viable third party that they control, you're not going to see anything but a Democrat or a Republican in office. So now they have to put the reins on to the Democrat to make you happy, to go from Democrat to Republican, to make you believe that, well, now the Republican's going to save the day. And then 4 years later, you're going to see he or she didn't, because now we may have a she running in a Republican. But things just got worse. But you don't see that, though. It got you believing there's a difference between the two parties. So you're going to You're going to expect a different party to go in. They're always going to keep the argument going that the parties, and that's why they always have to keep a relative balance in the parties to make you believe that as long as we put in either Tweedledee or Tweedledum, things will get better. So just hang on. We're all these parties. We just have little issues that we're trying to come together on when they're both socialists. I remember several elections ago, a socialist party went on CNN, the Communist News Network, and say, "Boy, we're just in ecstasy. We don't have to do anything. Actually, we don't even need a party candidate because the Democrats and Republicans are both socialists." I also saw a T-shirt at a gun show here about a month ago that said, "We used to fight communists. Now we elect them." Truer words were never spoken, but you don't see that because you believe when the press tells you we got this great democracy. This great democracy, which is a total lie, of course. This is not a democracy, it's a republic, as in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, but no, you believe the talking points, the talking heads that say that it's great democracy. And that's why, I think overall, the Democratic Party, if things were to leave its natural course, the Democratic Party would be more powerful. So that's why they have to bring on people like Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity or all these other Republican talking heads. You'll notice there's not hardly any Democrat talking heads where we have all these Republican talking heads. Those people are there, put into power in place and stay in their positions to make sure that the Republican Party or whatever party might be the weaker one gets to a higher prominence so that you believe that these talking heads are showing you that their party is superior to the other one, and you actually believe it because he's on the mainstream media, don't you know? Sean Hannity and all those others, they don't get to be in positions they are and stay in positions they are if they aren't doing the jobs of their masters, because the mainstream media is all controlled. You must know that. Now, certainly you Liberty Tree Radio listeners understand that. Probably most of the other do start to understand that as well. There is no real true free speech unless you own your free speech outlet yourself. There is no free speech in this country. That's why the soapbox is just not effective, as neither is the jury box, the cartridge box, or the ballot box. All the boxes of government have failed us, we the people. And until you take back control by stopping to pay them, because that's really what gets them to take notice. They don't care who you vote for. They control all that. They control all those boxes. But if you stop paying them, all of a sudden, now we got a serious situation. If you give them your power by consent, by continuing to pay the taxes you do not owe to please the IRS and other taxes you pay to please those in power. We started this whole conversation about the sales tax. Well, folks, we didn't have a property tax either before a certain time. There was something called land patent where right on the land patent it said, to give and to grant forever. There was no property taxes. All throughout our history, we've had points in our time where we had no property taxes, no sales taxes, no income taxes. That's the way this country was really designed. But no, it's morphed into something completely different. Now you're paying private companies a massive tax every year so that they'll leave you alone. They'll let you keep the stuff you have that you didn't actually buy, that you just discharged your debt with, paying for paper money instruments which had no substance and value whatsoever. And that's why you'll go along with this new system that will come into place where it's a cashless society, because you'll go along with it very well because they got you by the Social Security number. In other words, they will have, you will lose your, let's say you had 50,000 credits in the bank. Well, let's call them dollars. They're not really dollars, but let's call $50,000 in the bank. And you just lost all that overnight. All of a sudden you woke up one day and found out the whole system collapsed because people stopped believing that this stuff called dollars was actually of value. Well, no longer now. You don't have anything. Everything's destitute. Well, we're going to issue these new credits. We'll give you these 50,000 credits in this new system, this electronic money that we're going to give to you out of our good graces because, you know, this system collapsed. Well, this whole new system is going to be so much better. We're going to give you these credits, these 50,000 credits, so you can go on and continue life the way you did. And now we'll just extract the taxes right from your account. And you won't have to even, you can't even protest then at all, can you? It's coming straight out of your account. Because they got you by the Social Security number. And y'all don't want to admit it. And you'll just get mad at me instead and storm off and turn off the radio or whatever and say, oh, that guy's a fool. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I got my property. I'm going to keep my property. But he's right. You just can't admit it. You can't do anything about it. You think a gun's going to stop it all. But no. When that time comes and the money disappears, what you're going to do? You're going to get up and start shooting at people? Who are you going to shoot at? You're broke. You're destitute. Your family's going to start starving. You can't pay your water bill. Oh, but you got a gun. You need to take back control by stopping paying them. That's really the answer. The Second Amendment is important, don't get me wrong, but because you got that Social Security number, it sort of nullifies the Second Amendment in your case. Because what are you going to do? You're going to start shooting because now the money is no longer money, but they're offering you these credits. You got a house, you got property, you got a car, you got all this stuff. You're going to start shooting at people because the money collapsed? No, you're going to go along with the system just like everybody else. I'm saying, you know, you can get mad at me all you want. That's why I believe the Second Amendment isn't going to be as effective as you think it's going to be, unless they do declare martial law, and then you still are going to be by the Social Security number. Well, folks, my time is done, but nope, Ed might not be in the studio at the moment. All you chiming in right now to hear Mark Hornke, stay tuned right now. You're still listening to Forbidden Knowledge. My website is forbiddenknowledge.info. That's where you can find out where I'm at and what I'm doing, forbiddenknowledge.info, or you can find out what I can offer online as far as products, and that would be the prepperstop.com. So thanks all for listening or watching. My name is Craig. So long.